I don't know what on earth is going wrong with the system. Surely, if you have been deemed not to be, able to get asylum, I'm not quite sure what has changed.
Well, it's emerged that Ezedi was convicted of a sex offence in 2018 and was later granted asylum on his third time applying after converting to Christianity. He was originally from Afghanistan. Well, let's discuss the case now with the Conservative MP for Great Grimsby, Leah Nietzsche. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Given the rules, should this man have been granted asylum in the first place?
Well, I find it bizarre that somebody who can be denied asylum twice on a third attempt can actually get asylum after having a criminal offence and a charge against him. So I don't know what on earth is going wrong with the system. Surely, if you have been deemed not to be able to get asylum, I'm not quite sure what has changed. I understand in reports of the news that apparently he said he had converted to Christianity. Don't actually realise that your religion had anything to do with whether you were suitable for asylum in the UK or not.
Well, I think the Christianity was because were he to be sent back to Afghanistan, he would be in danger from the Muslim Taliban. But I mean, I suppose it is possible that someone could commit a crime of a criminal offence in this country and still be in danger were they to be sent back.
Well, that's true, but the concern that we have with obviously people wanting to claim asylum is we don't really know their whole history. We don't really know whether they come from the country that they claim to come from. We know that there are real examples of a greater and greater number of people who are claiming asylum who we really probably don't want in this country, and they could be a security risk.
I think at the time his third application was granted, the rules were that if you had a prison sentence of more than 2 years, you could be disqualified. Now I think that's been reduced to 1 year. What further changes would you like to see in the asylum law?
Well, I'm afraid we need to have an investigation to see what on earth is going on. I think we have some issues with our own legislation. I think we need to look at the Human Rights Act. We need to see if we need to make amendments or repeal that in some way, because we need to remember that we've got human rights that our own citizens have a right to as well, and there needs to be some serious looking at this. Obviously, my constituents, the majority of them, are very concerned about what is going on. We know that there are cases of good and bad, but I'm afraid that the Human Rights Act and similar acts look to be working against the UK population as a whole.
Does this case relate to the Human Rights Act at all? I mean, this is to do with British law, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I am concerned that my job is to make sure that the legislation that we put through Parliament is fit for purpose. And if we've got our own legislation initially that is causing us problems, then we have powers to do that. But beyond that, we need to look at international acts, agreements, and other courts as well to make sure that they are not overriding the sovereign right of the UK. So there's a lot of work for us still to do.
We're just hearing earlier on about removals of Turkish citizens back to Turkey. The Home Office saying that's not possible if they come here as illegal migrants because Turkey is not a safe country. That's the Home Office saying that. I mean, the government's getting into an awful mess in this area, isn't it?
I'm afraid that there are activities that seem to be going on within the Home Office department that really need to have a root and branch review, because it is concerning. Absolutely, it is concerning. I am astounded to hear what has been going on, and we need to know what's happening, and we need to have some serious looks at what exactly the Home Office is doing.
Leah Nietzsche, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, let's speak now to an immigration and human rights lawyer, Jacqueline McKenzie. Jacqueline McKenzie, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
The facts that we know of this case: 3 applications, successful on the third because of apparently fear of religious persecution in Afghanistan because he converted to Christianity. What do you make of that case history?
Well, the law that's relevant here is actually the Refugee Convention, and you can claim asylum and be granted refugee status because you fear persecution on the basis of your religion. And if someone is able to prove that, and it isn't easy to prove that, you go under quite considerable scrutiny, whether it's the Secretary of State looking at this or whether it's a tribunal judge looking at it. It isn't easy to do. And somehow somebody has scrutinized the case of Abdul Ezedi and has said that he has proved his claim. And so he's been granted asylum, refugee protection, because we still don't know yet what he was granted. We understand it was a tribunal. And that is the way the system works. In relation to the question about his conviction, the threshold, as you rightly said, is one of 12 months. There is discretion, and that discretion includes whether somebody is deemed to be a serious risk to society, have committed serious harm. And in this case, it was considered that wasn't the facts, and I don't quite understand how somebody who's committed a sexual assault, and we ought to be concerned about the criminal justice system here much more than about asylum seekers. I don't understand how somebody convicted of a sexual assault and exposure, and maybe the exposure offence might be a lesser offence, but certainly a sexual assault in my mind is a very serious offence, and got a suspended sentence.
I mean, I've certainly heard ministers say when foreigners serve prison sentences, the assumption is they'll be deported afterwards.
Well, the law, I was going to say, the 1971 Immigration Act allows that to happen, and it is mandatory by virtue of the 2007 Borders Act that if somebody serves a sentence of more than 12 months, so that is the threshold. This gentleman hasn't served a sentence at all. Well, he's got a suspended sentence, but it's whether you've gone to prison for 12 months or your sentence is 12 months of a custodial sentence. That's the threshold. Or if you've got lots of minor offences that sort of add up. So he hasn't actually met the threshold for somebody who would be considered to be a serious risk. And I would imagine the tribunal judge had before them a whole series of things, expert reports, maybe a report from the probation service, maybe a psychological report. We know absolutely nothing about his asylum claim or even about him, other than that he's committed what appears to be a heinous act, if it is him. I mean, obviously, we have to be careful about these things. It looks as though it is. And hopefully the criminal justice system will take its course if he's ever caught. But in terms of his asylum claims, I mean, the former immigration minister, Robert Jenrick, himself said earlier on another radio program that, the majority of people seeking asylum, the vast majority was the words he used, seeking asylum in the UK, are law-abiding people. And that is actually true. So the fact that we're framing this awful thing that's happened in Clapham into the debate about asylum, in my mind, is wrong. I think it's much more important that we be looking at how is it that this man only got suspended sentences, and we ought to be factoring in debate about violence against women and girls.
No, I understand that, but I think it's a normal reaction that many people will feel these are horrible circumstances. Why on earth was this man still here?
Yeah, no, I understand that, but we also have to look at the timing, because we know that there were major changes in Afghanistan. I don't know the dates. I've seen that the third attempt at asylum was 2020. We don't know whether that went to appeal and whether the final decision was in 2021, but we do know that in the August of 2021, the Taliban took power, and they're very rigid in their application of blasphemy laws. The death penalty exists for people who convert to other faiths, including Christianity. So a judge would have been forced with this balancing exercise. Here is a man who, on the one hand, isn't deemed a serious risk to society, he didn't get a custodial sentence, doesn't meet any of the exclusions under Article 1F of the Refugee Convention, doesn't meet any of the exclusions in our own guidance, but could face the death penalty. in Afghanistan. And we know also that 99% of all Afghans making asylum claims at the moment succeed. So that was a difficult job a judge would have had to do.
Jacqueline McKenzie, thank you very much indeed for your expert advice.
Thank you.